The systems that control your mind and your money are collapsing, and the two most powerful decentralized tools for sovereignty are fighting back together. I'm joined again by Sae Koo to explore why the journey to financial sovereignty and mental sovereignty are one and the same. Both Bitcoin and psychedelics teach you that you must confront the centralized control systems that govern your mind and your time. And stick around because we'll show you exactly how the decentralized properties of Bitcoin mirror the decentralized characteristics and effects of psychedelics in this wonderful exploration. I hope you enjoy. Let's dive in. Sae Koo, welcome back to Bitcoin for Millennials.
It's great to be back.
Yeah, I absolutely love that you're here again. We made a podcast before where we talked about how Bitcoin is an ego test. I don't know how many views that has, but it was really well received. Like, people really enjoyed how you talked me and everyone listening through that. And today we're going to take one step deeper, I think.
Exactly. I think the first presentation was titled, why Bitcoin is an ego test before it's an IQ test. And I tried to start to incept the idea from a psychedelic lens, because from my background, psychedelic works with the ego a lot. And so I was able to tie that and see that. But yeah, today I'm excited to go one step deeper and start to see the parallels of psychedelics and Bitcoin that I've unraveled.
Awesome. Well, I recently had an episode with Yoni Appelberg where we also kind of explored this, and we also agreed to do a second episode.
Amazing.
Think that like this combination of subjects is extremely interesting. I think it's under discussed, and well, I hope you can shed some light on how you view it today, and hopefully we can, tell more people about this, and let us know in the comments also what you think. I told you before, I glanced over the website. I didn't read it fully because I just wanted to be surprised. So I'll just give you the floor and we kick it off.
Awesome. Yeah, let's dive in. I think firstly, I wanted to share like why this topic. So my background comes from entrepreneurship, but burnt out entrepreneurship, and almost lived a classic archetype where I exited my company, felt very lost because my identity was so wrapped up in that company, and actually turned to self-development and the modality of psychedelics to get clear answers within myself. Long story short, had tons of experiences by myself and in group experiences that revealed a lot of the wounds I grew up with that led me to want to start a company, but from a place of ego, wanting to prove to others and myself to the world. And that was very enlightening, but also very scary because I was like, who am I beyond this company? And after a lot of experiences now, I'm able to understand who I am beyond that, and went into a career of psychedelic retreats for the last 6-7 years where I live in Costa Rica, and worked with a ton of founders, entrepreneurs who went through very similar identity crisis, for lack of a better word. And when I left that world late last year, I had a bunch of time to explore and study something. And that's when Bitcoin started to rise again. And I didn't know what I was holding, and decided to dive deep into the Bitcoin rabbit hole finally. And what really was fascinating for me and enlightening was how easy it was for me to understand it because of my psychedelic background, because of the experiences I've had with psychedelics, namely working with my ego or being aware of that. But one step further, as I kept studying Bitcoin, I was like, wow, this is so easy for me to understand, not because of me able to understand when my ego's at play, but the parallels of one's journey with psychedelics and their inner world, and one's journey with Bitcoin in their external world. So I wanted to share some insights I've gathered. This is a condensed version of a larger presentation you can find online, and you can link it in the show notes. But I title it The Sacred Parallels of Psychedelics and Bitcoin. And one just key caveat here is that I want to remind others that you can always replace in all of this presentation the word psychedelics with name your word that resonates with you, whether it be consciousness, whether it be spirituality, whatever that makes sense for you. You can always replace that, because I just see psychedelics as one channel and one vehicle to understand these greater truths that I've unraveled. So it starts with this, the fundamental truth. One big thing I realized in my psychedelic experiences is that no one is coming to save me. And I had to rip that off my programming. And I think that plays really well with this idea of true freedom begins the moment you claim full responsibility of our lives and dare to shatter the illusions that anyone else controls the keys to our lives. And so no one is coming to save you. No one owes you a rescue or a fix you, and only you can choose to wake up to that truth. And only when you are ready, reality rearranges itself, and powerful allies like psychedelics and Bitcoin appear to help you walk that path. Right. So we just stick with this part here. Psychedelics, I think, really invites the self-accountability in every one of us to say, I got to work on myself to change the reality of which I live in. If I'm depressed, I get to work out or take more walks in nature. I get to make that change versus waiting for someone else to give me permission to do so. And I think Bitcoin, very similarly, from a fundamental truth perspective, is no government or central bank is coming to save me. I get to be in control of my financial wealth, and I got to take actions by myself to make that happen.
Getting to that source truth gives you an anchor for dealing with the physical reality. And so I shared this, and then I said, well, and in Bitcoin, right, when you think about money, there is no anchor in fiat money, right? It's just made up. It's dictated for you, right? Your paradigm, your money paradigm is dictated for you. So there is no anchor for you. There's no way to establish trust other than other people telling you to trust the thing, right? But in Bitcoin, you can verify everything for yourself. But the fundamental truth, all the data in the time chain, right, in our blockchain, which is immutable, that is the ultimate truth, the ultimate engineered fundamental truth of this money system, which is verifiable for each user, each participant in this monetary network. So in that way, it serves as this anchor of conceptually understanding what this money is, but actually having something that you can not only verify for yourself, but can always go back to and be like, yeah, it's still uncorrupted. You know, the integrity is still upheld. So I can still trust this money. And so I love that you started with this, because this was the exact conversation that I had. But yeah, it's interesting that there's many layers where you can talk about this fundamental truth.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is I've been noticing myself explaining Bitcoin as an ideology of truth before it's a monetary network. And I think psychedelics is a pursuit of truth for oneself. Like everybody who I've worked with who said, I want to, find myself, I want to know who I am. It's a pursuit of truth. And I think both represent capital T truth in its own unique ways, one with a monetary network afterwards and one with their inner world of self.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Moving on. Something I didn't, even though both technologies feel very different, both offer pathways to sovereignty. Right? Bitcoin empowers individuals with financial sovereignty, and psychedelics facilitate spiritual sovereignty. And all of these are kind of crossing through this thread of personal transformation. And that's why I see them coming together so well together. Engaging with Bitcoin often requires deep research, self-education, and commitment to long-term thinking, while psychedelic experiences, when approached with intention and integration, can lead to profound self-discovery, healing, and growth. And so even though these two seem very far off, where they collide is in this pathway to sovereignty, and both require their own unique ways of proof of work to receive what one is seeking.
How would you describe that in the spiritual sense? Achieving this autonomy, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think when I've seen my own experiences and people's experiences go through deep journeys, whether it's healing deep trauma or remembering something that they've totally forgotten, once they remember, and I think the key word for me a lot of times is remember the truth, remember what happened, it liberates a lot of the perhaps old stories or current stories they perpetuate in their minds, that liberates themselves from a trap story that they've been living in for so long. So I think in relation to psychedelics and a spiritual sovereignty, remembering, and things might remember as simple as like old past traumas of something happening that has led one to be who they are today, getting back to that anchor of what that core memory was, starts to liberate themselves from confusion and the pursuit of greater freedom of different stories and new realities they can create for themselves.
When it comes to holding Bitcoin securely, peace of mind starts with architecture. On-Ramp's multi-institution custody model distributes control access across 3 independent regulated key holders in a 2 of 3 multi-sig quorum. No single point of failure, no pooled or omnibus exposure, just segregated client-titled vaults. You retain full legal ownership while On-Ramp coordinates security, compliance, and operational workflows behind the scenes. Multi-institution custody is the foundation for everything that On-Ramp builds. Sound infrastructure that distributes counterparty risk and provides fault-tolerant resilience with clear audits and institutional controls. And now On-Ramp is piloting flat, predictable pricing to make best-in-class Bitcoin custody and financial products more accessible than ever. Visit onrampbitcoin.com to learn more and sign up with code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. On-Ramp, strength in many, simplicity in one. My American friends, I've got something for you. If you're into Bitcoin, you want to grow your stack in any way possible. What if you could do it effortlessly just by spending your fiat? The Gemini Bitcoin credit card is designed to help you do just that, by giving you instant Bitcoin rewards on every purchase. Just use it like any other credit card and earn back up to 4% on transportation, 3% on dining, 2% on groceries, and 1% on everything else. There are no annual fees for this card and no exchange fees to receive your Bitcoin rewards. Sign up to get your limited edition Bitcoin Orange credit card and earn a $200 Bitcoin bonus when you spend $3,000 in the first 90 days. You can find more information and terms in the description below, or go to gemini.com/Bram to sign up today and start stacking effortlessly. That's gemini.com/Bram. Would you say that's also like the shared antagonist that they both battle, like this certain centralized control over something that you
Correct.
think you should follow, but you're not?
I mean,
you'll still survive if you don't.
The Bitcoin equivalent of central banks is the psychedelic equivalent of like church and religion, or organized church and religion. So that's what I see it as.
Yeah, I would say more like just people that totally are not spiritual, or just the basic matrix paradigm you grow up in, where again, I think this outsourcing is a word that comes.
I think the key word is outsourcing. Yeah. And I think the opposite side of that spectrum is like radical self-responsibility, self-accountability, self-action.
Yeah. Consciously. Right.
Absolutely.
Like knowingly, consciously doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I was doing research into these parallels, I found something really unique in that there's this direct link of mental health and financial debt in the same summer of 1971. When Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, as we know, that was in August 15, 1971. And just 2 months earlier, Nixon declared the war on drugs, which was the infamous war on psychedelics during that year. And so what I found was really interesting. The same summer of 1971, wrote one signature severed the mines from medicine and money from metal or gold, changing both inner and outer freedoms for generations. Right, so this great quote I found as well: classifying psychedelics as Schedule I drugs severed the connection between people and their intuition. And when the US came off the gold standard, it severed the link between money and energy. It is my belief that these things cannot be kept separate, from this guy named Max Mannheimer. So I just found that in that same time frame, and whether it was consciously or all planned, it happened all in that same period of time.
Feels like it's just a moment in like the pendulum swing,
right,
where these things are supposed to happen together or something, right? Who was Max Mannheimer? Do you know that?
No, I just saw he also understood this parallel and wrote some posts about this intersection.
Fascinating. I didn't notice actually that this was at the same time. Yeah, makes sense.
All right, so I have about like 10 or 12 of these that I'm just going to go through with you, and feel free to reflect on. These were the ones that I felt like were most easy to comprehend. There's more in the full presentation if anybody wants to dive deeper into that. But the first sacred parallel I call is only when you are ready. What I mean by that is psychedelics or plant medicine finds you only when you're ready to meet yourself. And Bitcoin clicks only when your old story and illusion starts to crack. And this idea in psychedelics is, my perspective is I never try to convince anybody or sell anybody on anything. And people will always say, I felt called to psychedelics. And I think there's a very similar perspective with Bitcoin. And, Saylor even says it's like, we only understand Bitcoin as a need to know basis, or in other words, when we are feeling something and a pain that brings us to that. And with psychedelics, it's usually loss of self, big transitory period, maybe divorce, or, shutting down a company. We feel some sort of pain. We want clarity, and that's where we seek psychedelics. Same thing with Bitcoin. Something isn't adding up with our money system or my own wealth, and we feel that pain, and we turn to something like Bitcoin. So it really starts to find us only when we are ready. Personally, I have this belief of lifetimes or past lives and future lives. And sometimes I say to people, like, some people just aren't ready, or their karmic relationship with psychedelics or Bitcoin isn't for this lifetime. And that gives me a lot of compassion for them as well. All right, the next one is the courageous entry. Psychedelics asks us to surrender everything we knew about ourselves when we go in. And I've heard so many stories of people absolutely freaked out when they come to these kinds of experiences. And Bitcoin asks you to surrender everything you knew of money. Right? Bitcoin is not, or both are not for the faint of heart. And that's the joke I always have with people when they finish a psychedelic experience. I was like, you now understand it's not for the faint of heart. And I think there's very similar with Bitcoin, because it challenges everything we understand of our reality, both from our inner selves with psychedelics and with the monetary system with Bitcoin. And Saylor quotes this as well, or Thiel as well. There are more geniuses and there are courageous people, something like that. I butchered it, but the idea of how much courage is required to enter into these technologies, because I think in the fundamental layer, these are paradigm shifting technologies, so it requires courage. Next, I found another parallel called earning the initiation. So what I mean by this is, in psychedelics, it always has to be really an invitation, not a prescription. If I or anybody try to sell you on experiencing something like psychedelics, it short circuits the inner authority that the medicine reveals. And what I mean by that is, it's very easy to point the finger at someone else and blame and outsource the blame on someone else if one had a very tough experience with psychedelics, which is very common as well. And Bitcoin, I say, it's a protocol, not a promise. It's if someone pushes you to buy, you inherit the conviction instead of forging your own through study, right? So if I just told someone to buy Bitcoin in the inevitable crashes or volatility, they sell because they don't understand it. And this whole concept of conviction cannot be borrowed. So like we talked about in the beginning, and you brought up the word, both teach freedom cannot be outsourced. It's earned through these self-initiations. And so I think earning that through experiencing it, proof of work, is another parallel I found here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this. I say this a lot with regard to the conviction on Bitcoin. It's you have to answer the question every day. Can I still trust my own judgment? Can I still trust the way that I'm looking at the world of money and finance and economics, and still be content and sure of the conviction that I created on Bitcoin? And I think it's the same, in psychedelics. Like, okay, I see this reality now different, right? Like, I know I'm not my body or my thoughts or whatever you've learned, and every time you get confronted with the other side of that, like not feeling centered, right, or really falling into your emotions again, or whatever your triggers are, that's the same moment. It's like, okay, but I learned about this other way to view and also experience the reality. Is that still the thing that I should follow, or should I, keep falling in this black hole of emotions or whatever. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and that is taking real ownership also, right? Like that is being aware. I think that's the consciousness part also. It's just really being aware of what is happening and that you're doubting yourself maybe, or questioning whether you understand something enough or have processed something enough. So it's really taking the conscious ownership instead of, again, that outsourcing is usually unconscious. People just do it without thinking.
Yeah, the words centering and meditation come up a lot when you brought up that point of when the hurricane arises in our inner world. I tend to go out in nature, center myself, close my eyes, tune in, and just be discerning of what is true for me and make those choices from there. So I really appreciate you bringing that up as well. All right, the next parallel I found was what I titled Dismantling Blind Faith, and it kind of goes a little bit beyond what we just talked about. Psychedelic cuts out the middlemen of belief systems, or maybe church religion systems that we're just being told what to believe in. Reality is validated through the direct felt sense of our own consciousness, not through a priest, therapist, or doctrine. And Bitcoin cuts out the middleman of money, values secured by transparent code and global consensus, not a bank, politician, or decree. And so both shift you from because they said so to because I can see, verify, and feel it for myself. Trust is no longer loaned to institutions. It's reclaimed as a direct knowing. And I think from my own experience, psychedelics, once one goes through that kind of experience, like once you feel it, like it's very difficult to say that's not true because you've been through the depth of it. And I think same thing when interacting with Bitcoin and you feel the becoming your own bank as an example and cutting out the middleman. It's very difficult to put into words, but it's a very powerful sense of feeling.
How would this other person know what's better for me than me? Why? Like, what is the reasoning, right? So you don't even have to go that philosophical or something. It's literally what you just said. Like, why would I do that? And maybe if they're not at my level, would I be okay with outsourcing this, right? And I think if you just think through it like that, you already get to this point where you could feel uncomfortable because you're going to realize that you have to take a decision whether you want to outsource that or not.
There's a great quote, meme in the psychedelic space, which is like, which said, all politicians should drink ayahuasca at least 12 times before taking office. And while that sounds intense, I would say there's truth in there because it signals, even the proof of work analogy here, of understanding oneself, understanding where decisions are being made from, understand how decisions can cascade into traumatic experiences for other people as well. So, all right, next one is, I call it the pills of perception. And I think there's ways to kind of name this differently, but I just saw that psychedelics, or the red pill, even though it's being used in many different ways right now, does generally represent one concept of psychedelics, where it slips you beyond the emotional spiritual matrix. You start to realize that your own thoughts, feelings, and patterns in a whole new way. I think of the Matrix movie as the perfect example of that, or the blue pills to go fall asleep, or is the red pills to go find truth. And I usually like to say that Matrix is just a documentary, not a fictional movie. And Bitcoin is the orange pill, as we all use, right? And exiting the monetary matrix, we start to see how money actually works beyond the banks and what governments tell us. So I just thought it was a fun little way to think about this concept of a red pill and an orange pill. It's almost like they're given to each of us, and we, by our choice, like you had mentioned, get to take it. And once we do, which requires courage, a reality starts to completely dismantle, or at least our old reality starts to dismantle, and a new reality gets to be reconstructed.
How does that go for you? Because I think this is actually the thing that a lot of people struggle with, because once you see it, like you are forced to make that conscious decision, right? This is like the biggest tension point, I would say.
In all of my previous psychedelic retreats we were hosting, the first quote we would introduce everybody to is, everything you are looking for is on the other side of fear. I didn't write that. Someone else, I forgot the name of it. But there's a lot of truth in that. And I apply then the next quote of how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if we're afraid of something right now in our relationships, that same fear is perpetuating probably in many other aspects of our lives, in our health pillars and in our family pillars, et cetera, et cetera. So compare the great quote of what you resist persists. So we encouraged a lot of the folks who were going through these deep experiences in psychedelics to lean into the fear and understand that it's just a concept that perhaps was formed unconsciously at a young age because of some sort of abandonment or some sort of experience that allowed the ego to say resisting and avoiding it was the form of survival to avoid that, right? But now that we're older, more mature, and perhaps more courageous to explore, leaning into that fear is usually the gateway to getting to everything that one is looking for.
Do you have, this is like the meme translation is not your keys, not your coins, right? It's just like, this is what you need to do to have the full experience, right? You can still outsource, custody, which I think is okay. Everyone has different ways to approach this. Some people are 100% self-custody, others do 50-50, 80-20, whatever. So I think it's great that there's like different tastes of that, as long as you make the conscious decision and understand what the trade-offs are for you, right? Like for you, it could be different than for me, but just making those decisions is already part of this radical personal responsibility, I would say, right? Just the fact that you are actually consciously making the decision, and that with every decision there is this trade-off that I am fully responsible for. Do you have any practical advice that you gained on this that you think would be helpful for people to kind of go through this fear or anxiety or maybe analysis paralysis, right? That don't really know what to do. Like, I just wonder what that is for you, because I've experienced, like, it comes back from time to time, right? Like, and I think that's the whole point, is that you keep on being aware of what you're doing and reassuring if you're still doing it right, and if not, you change course, of course.
Yeah, the first thing that comes up is the protocol and methodology we had for our retreats, which was naming the fear. So it can sound very simple, but maybe not easy for a lot of people as well. I'll give an example that's true for me in this moment of time. I fear the concept of divorce because I grew up in 3 generations of divorce. So I fear committing to a marriage because I fear perpetuating that same pattern of divorcing in my family name, which is a commitment I'm trying to break. So I give that example, but very practically naming that fear and getting to the truth of what that fear actually is, and then perhaps vocalizing that either in your own spiritual practice, whatever that may be, so that you can see what arises there, or to others who you absolutely trust to start to dismantle the story that is probably formulating that may probably be false because it's built on fear. Next is seeing the matrix code. So I said, psychedelics brings your unconscious patterns, social conditioning, and ancestral trauma, things that normally operate invisibly, now into plain sight. And we see this with Bitcoin memes as well. It illuminates the invisible rules of money, creation, and debt that controls us, that no one taught us was happening. So once again, we start to dive deeper into this experience, have the courage and the decision to dive into it. Then what usually happens is we start to see truth in so many different ways that we start to see what I call the matrix code. Psychedelics with how we've been operating and perhaps how systems are in everyday life, and Bitcoin with the monetary network. Here's an analogy I used to give with people when they were exploring psychedelics maybe versus meditation. Psychedelics is kind of like a highway right? You're driving through the highway, you're zooming past things, and the pro is that you get to perhaps quote the truth faster. The con is that you miss a lot of what's passed by you as you were driving to the destination. Whereas meditation, or you're saying with Bitcoin, it's slower steps. The pro is that you get to see everything slow at your pace, steady. The challenge is it takes longer period of time. So nothing good or bad. They just have their pros and cons, and maybe you can merge them together to balance that out together. The next one I call is egoless technologies. And I use this word particularly, egoless, because it's just how I resonate and see it. I see psychedelics as completely egoless. There's no ruler that owns this and can program it in any way. I say, especially with the psychedelics that are birthed from the earth, like psilocybin mushrooms or peyote cactuses and others, they're birthed from the earth. So it's egoless. It's nature birthed into these medicines. And Bitcoin is self-governing code, right? There's rules without rulers, value without CEOs, consensus without coercion. So both operate free of ego, acting as pristine mirrors, not masters. So the only authority you meet is your own. And I think that's what's so difficult, but also so beautiful, where because they're egoless, there's no governing body, there's no, you should do it this way. Each individual is asked to experience it, meet it, and create decisions from that is best for their lives.
Yeah. Right now, through 2025, Blockstream is running their biggest sale yet. 21% off the Blockstream Jade Plus right in their store, and your price is adjusted at checkout. This is the lowest price you'll see all year on the most trusted Bitcoin-only hardware wallet on the planet. The Blockstream Jade Plus is the simplest, most secure way to protect your Bitcoin. With a sleek design, full color display, and a dead simple setup, you'll be securing your sats in minutes. And pair it with their Blockstream app for the smoothest onboarding, offering advanced features like air-gapped setup, QR mode, and native multi-sig support as your stack grows. Go to store.blockstream.com, where the 21% discount is active through December 31st. And if you use my code BRAM, that's BRAM, you get an extra 10% off your order. Let's talk about something that not a lot of people think about before it's too late. Where are you storing your Bitcoin seed words? Are they truly secure? I found my solution with StampSeed. It's an elegant all-in-one titanium plate solution with no separate pieces to lose or manage. Your seed phrase gets permanently stamped into pure titanium that withstands fire, survives water, and lasts for generations. Unlike shallow etching methods, StampSeed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, protecting your financial legacy. When you order a titanium seed plate from StampSeed, you can also upload a custom design or your logo to customize the back of your plate to make it fully personalized. Paper seed phrases are a disaster waiting to happen. Secure your Bitcoin with StampSeed for decades to come. Visit stampseed.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to get 15% off your order. Are you okay stepping in the unknown? And the unknown behind that? Like, are you okay with that? And the level of courageousness needed, I think, is just subjective, whatever the word means. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add here, this concept has acted as a first principles thinking for me in many different times. I think of this when applied in psychedelics, and there's nothing against human created medications. I just question the intentions behind it, what went into that, why it was created. Psychedelics is a war on pharmaceuticals a lot of times. And I think psychedelics represents that egoless nature, free of corruption, because it is birthed from that natural world. And I think same thing with Bitcoin versus crypto. I anchor into this first principles thinking of, is it egoless, which means there's no rules. There's no rulers, and no human ego temptations that can manipulate it. And so this one has been such a powerful first principles for me, both in the psychedelic space with medicine and with Bitcoin and other monetary systems.
Would you say the ego part is also maybe then the purity part, or what I mentioned with the purity? It's like the protocol of Bitcoin is for anyone to adopt. In a sense that, like you said, there's nothing behind it anymore, right? And I think that's also the magic of Satoshi walking away. It's a very important part of Bitcoin. But it's like you see something on the ground that you can pick up and then make useful by yourself, instead of someone that is promoting something to you, right? Like having a sign on the street, like use this thing. I think that's a big difference. Yeah.
Agreed. Another parallel I found was the root question, right? Psychedelics invites the inquiry of who am I really beneath every story? And I use that very particularly because a lot of our reality is just simply shaped by the stories we tell ourselves. And Bitcoin challenges us to ask ourselves, what is money really at its core? And so I really like this idea of like, how do we get to the root cause or root question that has so many corollary or ripple effects from that core question. And so, I really love that. It come back to the root question of psychedelics, who am I really? And Bitcoin, what is money really?
Yeah, awesome. Funny how some of these things, both of these things, I would say, are so fundamental to everything we do every day. And we don't really ask them until we're forced to, I think, first. Again, that's why I also think it's hard to get Bitcoin. It's just like, if you don't really experience the problem, why would you be actively looking for the possibility of you actually having a problem, right? Like, it's nonsensical. So there's no real incentive or need or desire to find that out for most people, especially if you live in a country where money just works, right? So it's not really a necessity, but it is things like, seeing people rob banks in Lebanon, not to get other people's money, but their own money, that really woke me up along the way, where I was like, okay, that is pretty insane. It's insane that actually exists in a similar money system as the money system that I'm forced to use. There's not really much difference other than my fiat coin is more valuable than their fiat coin. And that was basically it. When I had that thought, I just continued with whatever I was doing, right? And I think that is what you're also showing here, is like, really get to that root and spending more time and energy on it to truly understand it. And again, I think also become comfortable with the fact that you had no clue before. I think is also a big part of this entire journey, is that you are okay with the not knowing before, until you're here where you're at now.
Yeah, I almost envision that these root questions are like doors that you're willing to open. And once you open, there's a deep rabbit hole on the other side of that door as you step through.
Like an instant cliff.
Exactly, instant cliff. And to carry that forward, the next one I wanted to share was called Heal the Root, Not the Symptoms. So especially in the psychedelic space, we talk a lot about the traumas and all these things that people go through, that how do we address the root cause of that, right? And so the result of that is a great quote in the psychedelic space, which is, when you heal yourself, you heal the world. And it's really starting to understand ourselves and how we relate to others that cascades into that effect. And I still am a big believer in that fundamental foundation. And Bitcoin, very similarly, on the other side, is when you fix the money, you fix the world by changing the incentives, steering markets, politics, and culture. So I just found that, what I find so fascinating is that these both are really trying to change, like, or question the deep-rooted foundation of things that can cascade into so many beautiful perspectives afterwards.
I wonder what you think about this, but like all the traumas, all the things, like it's all from the past. It literally doesn't exist anymore. It's just that you are still paying attention and giving it energy, that it's like accessible for you at the moments that it triggers you, and that is what's blocking you from fully living in the now, right? And well, back to the money, same thing. It's like, how do you live in the now if you're forced to constantly worry about the future because your money is losing value, right? Like, yeah, pretty wild if you think about it. I mean, this is why I call a fiat money is a spiritual crime, right? Like forced use of fiat money is a spiritual crime. It makes sure you don't have the time and space to actually go on that inner journey and fix these other things that are also very hard to combat, right?
Yeah, and I love that you brought up just like the opportunity to make that change today and now, with Bitcoin, transitioning our money into Bitcoin, and within psychedelics or spirituality, making different choices that affect our children and the next generation as well. The next one is expanding time horizons. So I believe healing is a lifelong journey. It's never just a silver bullet, as some people may misconstrue it as. So psychedelics reveals a long arc of healing. It's a lifelong journey, no quick fixes. And same thing with Bitcoin. Rewards patience for playing the long-term game with the inevitability of its price despite volatility. So both reorient are technologies that help reorient short-term dopamine to long-term wisdom, thinking in decades, not moments.
So I'm just thinking about like, how is that on the spiritual side? How is it's like what I said, like you could have this, I don't know, super spiritual, mystical, out of body, whatever, ego death experience. And then 3 days later, you're cursing at a person in traffic, right? Like you're totally back in that. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. So what's like the hodling equivalent of that?
Then what's coming up is one of the most difficult things that happen after psychedelic experiences is forgetting. So with the equivalence of the metaphor of hodling Bitcoin, it's like hodling the truth, the vision, the experience, and that requires its own unique sense of proof of work. By the key word is integrating in the psychedelic space, but more particularly, what are the new agreements I make with myself? What are the new actions I'm committing to have in my life? And practice that almost as rituals so that I can keep holding on to that truth that I experience. So that's the closest metaphor I see of hodling Bitcoin as the coins, but hodling the memory of that so that we don't forget.
Yeah, love that. Awesome. Next one.
All right, next one. I call these technologies borderless and timeless. So psychedelics originates as ancient medicines, evolved into universal sacraments across all cultures for thousands of years and beyond. No single tribe or doctrine claims them. I just find that so fascinating. There's a whole rabbit hole there. And Bitcoin, digital money that moves anywhere the internet reaches, no borders, gatekeepers, transcends governments and generations to come. So both operate beyond the politics, beyond passports, and beyond the passage of time. They represent technologies that represent to all people, belonging to all people, accessible in every era for eternity. And whether Bitcoin works or not, my point is like the technology is accessible across borders and across time, which I find so fascinating.
When you think about this, like some people say, like, oh, Bitcoin is a divine gift. It's a gift, right? It's given, literally, it's given to us as this solution for money. How? I mean, that sounds probably woo-woo to some people, but like, how do you think through the fact that there are so many similarities with, in this context, Bitcoin and psychedelics, but also, you know, I listened to like quantum mechanics podcasts that talk about, you know, how high entropy is turned into low entropy, like high entropy is in the energy or the consciousness turned into low entropy, you know, being the things in this reality. And then I'm thinking like, whoa, there's so many similarities with Bitcoin. So my question is like, how do you think about Bitcoin in that context? Like, do you also think it's a gift? Is it just coincidence that there's so many parallels, or is that actually something that like bolsters your conviction or like your interest or fascination with this? Right? For me, it's quite stunning. Yeah, even the power law thing. right, is similar. It's like, oh, it also has a power law. Well, it actually has like 7 power laws, right? Like hash rate, price, and all these things. And I'm like, man, really? How it seems less and less like a random thing.
So the way I'll respond is I'm reminded that humans and myself are meaning-making machines. But to go one step further on that, in a lot of my psychedelic experiences, I've come to this truth and understanding that what we believe becomes our reality. So we might as well have like beautiful beliefs to have a beautiful reality. Obviously, the caveat is still keep it tethered to reality and grounded. So my perspective is, sure, these could be all coincidences or absolute divine, creation. What kind of reality and life would I like to be in? One that believes in magic, one that believes in divine guidance and order and all these different things that brings so much hope to my life. I'd rather do that. I'd rather be in that perspective than something that's super somber or pessimistic that drags down my reality, drags down my life, quality of life, drag down others in my surrounding communities as well. So that's what comes up is like, if what we think creates our reality, might as well make it a good one. All right, I want to close with 2 more very quickly. First one is honoring the sleeping baby. One of the greatest reminders I was given in my experiences with psychedelics was when we are awakened with psychedelics and we want to run back to the world and scream and say, you got to take psychedelics. One of my teachers once said, remember them as a sleeping baby. And when you walk into a room of a sleeping baby, what do? You tiptoe around them. You don't just forcibly wake them up and them start to cry. And it stuck with me because I think there's a beautiful parallel here with both psychedelics and Bitcoin, right? So for psychedelics, the journey must be an invitation, a personal calling, not a push. Otherwise, the struggle gets blamed on us who try to do that, and we rob them from experiencing one of life's magical gifts when they come to their own realization of their own awakening and their journey. And I think same thing with Bitcoin. We try to shove someone down to the Bitcoin rabbit hole. I think they any form of volatility starts to create that anger and resentment back. And so both respect free will as sacred. Growth is self-timed for themselves. Awakening cannot be coerced. To let each soul wake up when it's ready, both with psychedelics and with Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's what we're saying, right? When people say, "Oh, Bitcoin is a cult," I always say, "Well, if Bitcoin was a cult, it would be the only one in the world where members would tell other members to please not listen to them and think for themselves," right? I think that's kind of what we're talking about here. Like it's like you cannot make someone fall in love with you or whatever. Like that wouldn't give you a good relationship. And I think is similar with this, right? Just a full conscious decision by yourself. And no one can force you, as opposed to fiat money again, right? Because you're using that because other people tell you to.
Beautiful. And the last one I just wanted to share, and again, there's a whole presentation of this if you guys want to dive into all the other ones, is, and I end with this particularly, called the Stewards of the Next 7 Generations. So in psychedelics, and a lot of my own experiences and hearing so many others, and in sacred text messages and like scriptures or philosophies that's been passed down. They say psychedelics gives us the courage to face the pain of our ancestors couldn't, cuts the chain of inherited trauma and gives the descendants a new story written with conscious choice instead of unconscious programming. So this idea that in psychedelics, when we start to awaken to truths that we've forgotten, not only does it give the opportunity to what's called heal the next 7 generations, which is who you choose to be and the new actions you get to create, influences your babies and your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren, et cetera, but it also is an opportunity to heal the previous 7 generations, to stop the passing down of a lineage of patterns that may not have been fully aligned. whether that was unconscious or subconscious. So I think there's something really beautiful of what is this all for, right? So psychedelics is healing the next 7 generations, but also the past 7 generations. And then when I take that same analogy into Bitcoin, it allows us to store our time and energy in a monetary form that preserves generational wealth. And we hear the meme, enough to retire bloodlines, immune to decay, entropy, and manipulation. And I think there's something really beautiful if I take that same analogy of how do I set my children up for the next generation, but their grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren, and it can start with me changing that pattern. And when I do that, it heals this previous 7 generations of perhaps family members that didn't know anything about money, that just lived with the programming of it and just continue to perpetuate the scarcity mindset that was passed down over and over. So I just think there's something really beautiful of what is this all for? And it's really setting up the next 7 generations, but also honoring and healing the previous 7 generations. And I think both of these technologies do it in its own beautiful ways.
Yeah, and again, you can be the person to do that. I think that is also really cool, right? Like you get to break that chain, basically. I think that is very, very cool. Awesome.
So that's it for the parallels. And I wanted to see if you wanted to share what we're co-creating for next year as well.
Yeah. So as you may have noticed, Tim and I kind of found each other on these topics, and like we also said, we've recorded a previous podcast, which I think people will also enjoy, and so we started talking about what could we do with this, and then I shared, and I'm pulling up the screen. I shared an idea I had for creating, I don't know, a psychedelic. We use the word retreat, but I don't like the word retreat. So now we say gathering, right? But yeah, our idea is so I shared about this, and Tim got in touch, and he said, "Well, this is something that me and Madeline, who you've also worked with, could organize. Why not work together?" So that's what we're doing. So in the summer of 2026, we're going to hold the first ever Bitcoin psychedelic gathering with 25 Bitcoiners for a few days at a location that's TBD, where mushrooms are legal. We're going to organize this gathering. You can check out information on goingbeyondbitcoin.com. And our goal is to have like a not-for-profit event. So we aim at pricing everything at cost, and eventually, we want to create this psychedelic immersion with workshops, talks, a ceremony together, reflection together, and we're trying to set that up. Tomorrow, we'll have our first intro call with people that applied. So if this is something that resonates with you, then we invite you to go to the website and apply, and maybe we'll see you there. And also, when we're looking at when we're seeing the interest, I can imagine we're probably going to do more. But summer next year is the kickoff. Yeah.
And the only thing I'll add here is that for me, I come from that psychedelic retreat world. A lot of the times it's really trying to dive deeper beyond, in this case with Bitcoin, beyond the price action. So how can we apply Bitcoin ethos and principles and psychedelic principles that we've learned in our experiences into other facets of our lives, right? How we do one thing is how we do everything. So now that we've understood Bitcoin, how do we apply those ethos and principles and lens into our relationships, our family, our spirituality pillar, our health pillar as well. So these are for Bitcoiners by Bitcoiners to look beyond Bitcoin, and that's why it's called Going Beyond Bitcoin, and be able to start to seep this lens into other facets of our lives. And so, if you feel called, we'll be there and organizing this, and looking forward to meeting you if you do come.
Yeah, and we'll put the link in the description. I have one more question for you to wrap it up. Of course, usually I ask everyone the same question, but you already answered that in the previous episode. So for this conversation, I was thinking, if these two movements keep on colliding, as we are kind of seeing also with the interest on this event. Like I told you, I ran into other people that are also thinking about organizing similar events. If these two movements really are part of this bigger renaissance and we achieve both individual mental freedom and financial sovereignty through Bitcoin, what does the world then look like? What is hyper Bitcoinization of the mind? Like, what is your idea of that future?
Oof, thank you. All right. I see families spending more time together and enjoying their days because they don't need to, their money is fixed and they remember the importance of relationships. I see entrepreneurs solving the next set of challenges that emerge for our world because they can pursue meaningful ideas that go beyond just themselves and their own self-interest for personal growth needs, because the money system is fixed in that regards too. I see a lot more collaboration, especially in the political landscape, where assuming politicians in power go through the initiation of actually, whether it's psychedelics or self-discovery, dismantle this idea that separation is true. Separation is the illusion of connectedness. So let's say, and even in the Bitcoin space, I just see people coming together much more with greater empathy and compassion instead of massive divisiveness, because I think they can empathize with where people come from much more. So that's a vision I see in very different aspects of life.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks for going through this. I hope people find this insightful, and it's good to talk to you again, and stay in touch. And I'm excited for next year. So thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Appreciate it, bro.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.